what you want to be sure about is don't eat them. Because we're going to talk about all of these various things that were from the Civil War era and give you a little bit about it, and then you get to try it. I have given this talk here before, twice now, I guess. Once was here, and then once was at another spot in Maine. So I'm going to field questions to begin with to set you up, because people were kind of asking the same kinds of things before we officially start. But these are not heat sealed because then you don't have to try to tear them open. And the weather isn't piping hot, and it's not freezing cold, and it'll be rain later. So that all means perfect. Yeah, I appreciate it. Marijuana, did you say? Yeah. Oh, dandelion. Yeah, I don't remember ever reading that people in the Civil War marched. I mean, they may have. Yeah, no, but not that they ate it or used it medicinally that I ever found. Like, do you know something different?
No, it's something.
Oh, you're thinking of it? Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Oh, thank you. Good. Are you staying? And were you at the last one? Not. Alright. Good. Here you guys go. Now we're operating. Thank you. It is, in fact, a collision of different cultures. So not just a war, not just this side and that side, but what everybody seemed to have brought to the picture during the Civil War. So we're going to talk about that. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about just from the get-go is, let's see, I want to make sure I had everything. One of the things I want to talk about from the get-go is the question everybody asks is, where did the food come from for the Civil War soldiers, right? So that's a really common question. And the answer is yes. Yes, because it came from all over the place. It isn't like today. My husband's military, and when he was in Afghanistan, here's where it came from. And then you have the commissaries, and then you go to the USO and the airport, and the little snacks up there. Not like that. It was really disorderly, as you can imagine, and really very desperate in terms of food, as well as other things. So they got them from, one of them is from places like the U.S. Sanitary Department. You guys know about that at all? Very, very important to the food of the Civil War. It was a group of people mainly out of, I believe it was Philly and Boston area, but they had the well-being of everybody who was fighting. And what they did is they had recommendations that they gave to the second group who helped to supply the soldiers with food, gave them recommendations about what to send. And so it could have been a whole number of people, but especially people from home who were really robust about sending the soldiers whatever they could while it lasted, and of course they had limitations as well. So it was, in fact, their mission, the U.S. Sanitary Commission, it was called, to make sure that not only was the food the right food, but the conditions were sanitary so that they could limit the spread of disease. And not to huge success, but at least they had some impact. So that's the second place. A third place will be from the government itself. So we'll talk about some of the items that the soldiers had there and what that meant and how they strategized not only about how to get it to them, but you'd be surprised at what it was that they really needed. So there's that. Then the next thing that you know about, but you can't overstate how important it was foraging. So when you don't have food, and I'm going to tell you, I've read accounts from people who were in the Civil War of what, like journalists and others like journalists, you know, maybe for the government. And these guys would be out there, and it's kind of like ripping, and almost makes you want to go, oh my God. Where there were these accounts where they were fighting, I'm going to call it Union Confederacies, I'm going to call it, and they were fighting together, and they saw blackberries just spread out, and they just couldn't believe the incredible aspect, and they all raced forward together and shared the bushes. They were the enemies, and their accounts were, we didn't care, we had one thing in mind, those blackberries, and they just ate them together. Doesn't that give you the chills? So it really was about foraging. And the last thing is, you know, I can't say the extent that this is true, but as I've been researching, so my research is actually as a cultural researcher in how things affected people, affected all of us. It's a very big, important thing. And so the two sides, if you can even break them up that way, you know, there were many different inputs from all over the place. We'll just say, simplified, they helped each other at various times and in various points in the war. So the food came from all of those places, and unquestionably, there was never enough. I mean, it was never a good thing. But that's what it was like, and that's where they came from. So having said that, would you like to ask me any questions about that? Or is there anything? Yes?
In Gone with the Wind, we saw them also stealing from the enemy's homes.
So you got to really Gone with the Wind I saw when I was in junior high on a class trip. I'm 67, so things are really different in those days. And going to a movie was a really big deal. However, having said that, and I want to tell you guys this because I think it's important overall, don't believe any of it. Particularly the historic messaging that you get, because the reality is when you get those messages, it's in a movie, and I understand what you're saying, and I will address it, but in a movie, it's got to be what's going to be the most interesting, right? And when people did raid houses, of course they did it everywhere, but they weren't going, oh look, they're Southerners, we're Union, let's go raid their house. They were like, oh my God, this food, let's get it. And it didn't matter. But what you have to know is if you're interested in the Civil War and anything historically, it isn't what you see, because the history accounts that you have, not all of them, but many of them, if not most of them, were from other people of the same time period. And to really know what happened during the Civil War or any time period, here's what you gotta do. And it's related to what I'm telling you here, because this is how I found this stuff out. Everybody listening, go to newspapers.com and put in the year you're interested in as a start. And Google has a lot, and there are so many different volumes of things out now. So if you're really interested in the food of the Civil War and you want to know about hardtack, which everybody's interested in, right? What you got to do is put in the dates of the Civil War, the place, United States, hardtack, and all these newspaper items will come up. And they'll be talking about it in real time. And it is not what you think. It's just very different. In most of the Civil War novels, what was that very popular one about a bunch of women at home? Little Women, right? Little Women, yeah. Oh, please. No. It wasn't, they didn't have much to eat. It wasn't even like that, it was worse. And Little Home in a Prairie, remember that? And how they were lucky, they loved what they, no, they didn't have anything to eat. I mean, they were making a birthday cake out of sawdust. And I read that account. I mean, it really wasn't. So if you really want to know, do that. Go to the originals. So with the Civil War, then what you find, in fact, is that there was a foraging which happened in people's houses, right? And they took what they could. And it's also, that kind of thing is, in fact, a weapon of war. You're absolutely right. But at that level, at that point in history, it was also just, we got to get something to eat, let's go. After the wars, when they really started burning, or during, but started burning things down strategically. So, yeah, is that a good answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of went a little off track, but yeah. Anybody else? Other questions about what they ate and where they got it from? Okay. Oh, there is one more place that I want to mention, and that is the companies who were around at the time when they could get sugar or some version of sugar, sent what they had off to the Union soldiers, in particular, and then south, further south end when they could, to those soldiers. And the soldiers also would take the ingredients and they would make their own. And I'm really just talking about candy here. Make their own candy. I have one little clip of a guy who just signed up for the Confederacy beginning of the war, and his notes are saying, oh, great day, I'm pulling sugar, which would be pulling molasses, which is the taffy. Lovely day, this war will be over soon, and then we'll get back to business. Okay, so they did have, at the very beginning anyway, the means of making things for pleasure that they like in this case, candy. So it's a real confluence of things. Alrighty, are we good? Alright, so here's your bag of things. And there are a lot of interesting stories around these. What I wanted to ask you to start is if there's anything in this bag you would like to start with, and I can tell you about it. And then eat it when I'm done.
What about this twig?
Here you go. Here you go.
We have 30. We've got 30. If I can share with somebody, if I just want to hold stuff up, then I can share. I don't know. You can be my partner. All right? Yeah. Oh, thank you. All right, guys, anything you want to start with or that I can. All right, so here's an important thing for you to know. All through history, people have used roots, bark, saps, and leaves to eat. So if you ever go to a sort of, well, we carried it. My business, by the way, is in Harper's Ferry, and if you know True Trees, the historic candy company, yeah, that's my business. You may have had raspberry leaf tea, blackberry leaf tea, right, that kind of thing. So everybody used all parts of the plant. It wasn't just what we use now. But I will tell you, during the Civil War, that became really drastic. So this here is one of the roots that they used during the Civil War. And when you chew this root, it splays out like forks like that. And all through history, people have used that to chew, brush their teeth. Now remember that the toothbrush at the time was bark or sap. The earliest chewing gums going up through World War II had as the basis sap. So certainly the Civil War soldiers, they saw a sweet gum tree or a hickory tree, it didn't matter, the sap, and you chew it, and that cleans your teeth and had medicinal. This is a plant that's from the ground, so what I'm going to say is, go ahead and try it, and tell me if you recognize the flavor. It'll change flavor a little bit. You just take a bite of it, and guys, don't worry about don't worry that it's a root. It's an anomaly historically. That we don't need roots and barks and leaves. You don't like it? Kind of like it? Yes? Has everybody had a chance to try it? This is a plant, yes. It is not sassafras, but it's a very good guess. And I'll tell you why in a second. It's a plant. Sorry? No, it isn't eucalyptus either, but can you hold up your stick? Can you hold up your root? Yeah. See, does everybody see how it's splaying out? See what I mean?
Oh.
That? Yeah, so what that is it's a plant that came here in the 1500s. What? Honey?
Honeysuckle.
Honeysuckle. No, I'm going to tell you. You ready?
Yeah.
Licorice root.
You say licorice?
It's the root of the licorice plant. Yeah, so how many of you liked it? Raise your hand. How many of you didn't like it? Raise your hand. Oh, you guys are pretty good. How many of you were not responding? Raise your hand. To my survey here. All right. Let me tell you a little bit about licorice and then we'll move on. Licorice is a significant plant both during the Civil War and after. It grows in cool climates. I live in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. If you live anywhere in that radius, you can grow it in your backyard as I do. And it's perennial, so it keeps coming back.
It's not, but it's important. It's not indigenous.
Two thoughts about that. One thought is it is indigenous, but I know when it came over in the 1500s, it could have already been here, but I'm doubtful. Right? Yeah. So that's one thing. The licorice root was used as an extract for medicine. It was used to chew. It was used for asthma, they thought. There were so many ailments that would help to it. After the Civil War, when the southern plantation owners needed crops, right? They didn't have cane sugar, but also even tobacco was saturated, right? A group of farmers, but farm owners, plantation owners, lobbied the government for money to have a licorice economy. They wanted to grow licorice to rebuild the South because they needed money and felt it was in the best interest of a unified country. Really, they needed money mostly. And what did they want the licorice for, these Confederate people? Anybody want to guess? No? Okay. Tobacco. because licorice was used in pipe tobacco, it was used in all the tobaccos to sweeten the flavor, also it was more economical than using tobacco just straight. So they were lobbying, and again, these articles, you'll never see it in a book, but I found a ton of them on newspapers.com and other places. They lobbied the government to give them literal seed money to start a licorice economy. They never got it, and we have never grown licorice here as a crop, even though we could. Isn't that something? So that was the licorice of the time.
How does describe the plant? Is it a short plant? Is it a rooty plant?
Well, it's shrubby, right? And mine's about that high. It's kind of spindly. It could just be.
Are we eating the spindles or the roots?
You're eating the roots. It's the root of the plant. Thank you for asking. Anybody else about licorice? No? Red licorice isn't really licorice, by the way. You know that, right? Yeah. It was made in the 1920s. Yeah. Yeah, the anise, right. The anise is a different plant, but companies use anise in their sweets and their candies because it's cheaper. And if you ever want if you ever want a great pollinator in your garden, get anise plants. They grow, they're gorgeous, huge, have more flowers late in the season, and the smell is just delectable. It smells like anise from there and far, and you can use it for cooking. But I'm not telling you that because you're with me, so don't come after me.
I missed it earlier. Where does the licorice come from? Is it coming from?
Well, it wasn't really clear because the licorice came here. Again, I'm pretty sure this isn't how it happened, but one strand of it is that it came here with the British and a guy in the early 1600s. And this guy gave it to the Native Americans, and then the blacks used it for ear problems, and the story goes on and on. So it probably came over with settlers of some sort, and because it was such a shared economy and shared kinds of botanicals, it could have come there. But you have to remember that there are also stories of how the Native Americans used licorice as well, but there's no evidence that it ever is native to North America. So it's kind of, we're going to run with the one that it came over in the, with people from New York. Does that work? Yeah. And now, does it really matter? No, we ain't anise anyway. We don't eat licorice that much. Good? Next. What is the next thing that you would like to talk about in the bag? What, honey? All right. Good. So I guess you guys, did any of you listen to NPR? I just did a thing on television. I do a regular series of content for them. And I just did the television, but I guess I'm Are you coming when you're ready? You ready? So one thing about the candy that we eat today, and that the Civil War soldiers had, they were used as medicines. All the candy that you get today, somewhere along the line, started as medicine. And that's how you can say that candy has been around since people have been around eating it, and that's all history. The jelly beans are an interesting example. They're a hybrid of industry, of warfare, of medicine, and of fun. And the story of the jelly bean is it started with the Turkish delight. You guys know Turkish delight from the Chronicles of Narnia? Yeah. Do you guys carry Turkish delight here? Do you carry it? Oh, do you carry a Turkish delight here? You sold out, yeah. We started museums and it's, yeah, okay. We just sent 1,000 pieces to them. It's really good. But anyway, the Turkish delight originated as a medicine around the year 900. And people were using it for death, for sore throat. They kept eating it and eating it. Long story short is it wound up in my hometown of Boston. And there in Boston, a candy maker got this idea, and he took the Turkish delight and put a sugar shell on it. And that became known as the jelly bean. The jelly bean was a guy who shows up for a date and is very well dressed. He's what they call the fop, but his flowers are falling off. He's really goofy, but he's really like, you know, F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote a story about how bad a jelly bean was, actually. And so that's what the jelly bean came out of. In Boston, there was a company called Schrapp's Candy. And it was likely at Schrapp's that the guy who owned it, who was really, you know, very engaged, wound up taking the jelly bean and sending it to the Union soldiers. At the same time that was happening, a guy in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who was a pharmacist, was making a candy, which was a lozenge, that he also sent to the Civil War soldiers. And you know what that was? The necco wafer. You know the necco wafer, the little round circular neckos? Yeah. We didn't get them in time. They're sort of sketchy. The company closed, but it reopened with another company. We didn't get them in. I was giving you some. But anyway, the necco wafer. So you find that if you made candy, and if you had means to do so, you would send it to the soldiers. That was true in World War I and World War II. You know about Hershey sending the candy bars, right? Everybody sent whatever they had. They weren't doing anybody any favors. If you didn't send the candy to the troops, you went out of business. That was the only customer was the War Department. And during the Civil War, it was more that, you know, they're our family and they're our friends. We want to get them something that's good and medicinal. So that's the jelly bean. The only other thing I want to say about the jelly bean, and then go ahead and have some, and I can answer any questions about it. The jelly bean started as the gumdrop, probably in the 1830s. Then it became the jelly bean, and then it became the gummy candies. And then it was in Chronicles of Narnia, gummy candies. But it's had a really long history and would not have been a stranger to the Union soldiers when they got it. I mean, they knew what it was. Candy was made just before the Civil War. It was made, you know how they say that candy was really expensive, nobody could ever get it? That's not even remotely true. Candy was made for working class kids. It was really egalitarian. It was the first time working class kids could take what little money they had, go in and spend it, and they were initiated into the world of the middle class and gave them hope. Hence one of the reasons that the candy got their reputation. So the soldiers knew jelly bean. Certainly, even if they were from rural areas, they had some contact with it. So it wasn't new. So yeah, go ahead, give it a try. It does not taste like the jelly, right? And the reason is that the flavor is on the outside, and the jelly belly was made with the flavor inside. And you're filming this, so don't post it. But it was made by a guy named David Klein, Jelly Belly people, who hired him to make it for him. They stole it, and there was a 5-year lawsuit. And now they're billionaires, and they don't give David Klein anything. That's a sad story. But anyway, any thoughts about the jelly bean and anything else?
What's the medicinal value?
The medicinal value, guys, listen to me. The medicinal value is the sugar. I mean, that's a really large part of it. And sugar has all, sorry?
We should be eating more sugar?
You should know how much sugar you're eating. Sugar is not bad for you. Sugar is not great evil. The problem we have is we don't know what we're eating or how much we need. Why do you think that there were sugar shortages during the wars and the Civil War soldiers? Why there was such a push to get them sugar? Now remember, the sugar, here's the sugar. You want to try the sugar? And we'll talk more about sugar. So this went to the Civil War soldiers. This is the sugar, the brown sugar, okay? It's really important. It's very important because it's a rapid carbohydrate. It gives you immediate access to the energy you need. And if you don't have sugar, you die. So the idea that sugar is bad for you is an idea which you express, which is what people think. It's a matter of degree. But if you don't, I mean, you know, cane sugar is not the majority of sugars around the world. I mean, Native Americans didn't have it. They weren't bad, right? They always had fructose. They got other kinds of sugar. But this is the sugar. And the Civil War soldiers would have this from the start, and be in whatever kind of food groupings they got at that time.
Is this, what type of sugar is this?
This is cane sugar.
Cane.
Yeah, now this is brown because it's
Not refined.
well, no, they're all processed. What they're doing now is taking white sugar and putting a brown color for molasses to make it look like it's the original, but it isn't. You know, I don't want to go too far off track, but if you just give me a minute, sugar was really, really significant to the Civil War. And the reason had to do in part by the amount of sugar you could get and what you could get. A whole group of abolitionists boycotted cane sugar with the thought that if you boycott cane sugar, you make the economy of enslavement fall apart. And that isn't what happened, but that was what they believed. Others took the moral high ground of not eating anything that's made with what they call blood and sweat of slaves. And so, but you still need sugar. You have to have sugar. They did what Napoleon did. They used the sugar beet, and they processed that into sugar. Today, probably half of the white sugar you get comes from the beet. It wound up being really important because now we don't have a sugar economy, right? But we may have sorghum syrup, which is a grain, not so much because it doesn't crystallize. And then there's cane, and there's certainly a lot more sugar. So when the Civil War soldiers were getting this, it was of great importance for a number of reasons. So the medicinal quality would have come from the sugar, but it could have also come from, say, during the Second World War, you had sour balls. It had sugar, and you had food flavors, right, which actually had vitamin C in it. So it wasn't solely that, but it was a big part of it. With the hard candies also, it helped them salivate. So one of the biggest problems in war, if you don't have what you need, is getting water and quenching your thirst. So in the Civil War, the candies could have been hardtack candy. I don't know if you know it, it's called stained glass also. It could have been drops, certainly, but that, if they could have it, they didn't have that much, but if they could have that, that also helped them salivate, kept away the thirst and so on, and gave them sugar. So thank you for that question. It's what everybody thinks, and I'm always happy to address it. Anything else about the jelly bean or sugar? Okay, I want to ask you a question. How many of you guys have eaten the sugar now? Everybody? Anybody here? Have you eaten the sugar that I gave you? Yes, yes, yes. What did you notice about it?
It was very sweet.
Oh, you noticed it was sweet? Did you find it sweet? Okay, what did you notice?
It had a little aftertaste.
Oh, a little bitter aftertaste? Oh, good. Okay, interesting. Anybody else?
It's not as granulated.
It's not as granulated. Yeah?
There was an initial taste of it.
Oh, really? There's an initial taste. Yeah, it's just sugar. Now that's interesting that you found it very sweet, because actually cane sugar isn't very sweet. But we get all these other adaptations of it. So now it's sweeter than it would naturally be. And if any of you have been to the Caribbean and had the cane sugar with the water, it's hardly sweet at all. So, yeah, that's interesting. The other thing I want to tell you about sugar, just as an FYI before we move on, because I have an audience, and I know that you're all really focused on what I'm saying, because you're going to move on to the next thing. So I'm going to take this time to tell you, kids, you know the idea, don't give your kids candy because it hypes them up and it's the sugar? It's not true. And here's what's so, you know you are. You have to know. Now listen to your mother. I'm a mother, a grandmother, since we tell you that. But the interesting aspect of that before we move on, which is why it's so cemented in our heads that sugar is so bad. What Cornell University and John Hopkins, they all have these articles and studies of it. Why do people believe it? So the study is, why is it so integral to our lives and our belief system that sugar makes kids hyper, and candy makes, especially candy makes kids hyper, when in fact it doesn't. There was one study of one kid back in the 30s, I think it was, or 40s. It doesn't. And so, how do you get people to know the truth about food when, you know, how does their belief system and their trust system work? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if I eat sugar,
Sorry?
if I eat sugar, I get an energy rush. I get an energy burst
That's
for about
good.
15 minutes.
Okay.
So I get hyper.
I don't know. It gets me drowsy. I'll take your word for it. Yeah. I mean, it probably do. It's carbohydrate. Yeah.
It's carbohydrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I believe you. I do indeed. Thank you for that. All right. Next in our lineup. Anybody see anything you really want to talk about? All right. So this is in this little bag. Just take a little bite of it and try it. And it is one of the most valuable flowers that we have, and we don't even know it. It was revered in Asia and was used by the Civil War soldiers because it was available and they needed it and they liked it. And I bet if you didn't hear me say what it is, you wouldn't even know, right? Do you like it? Just eating it? Some people do, some people don't. It tastes kind of grassy, right? Sorry?
It tastes like alfalfa.
It tastes like alfalfa. Sorry? Yeah, that's the dandelion. So the dandelion by the civil, so you remember the foraging aspect. So you see dandelions growing all over the place. Everybody knows about dandelion wine. You can have dandelion salad, but especially the dried dandelion as a tea. And they may have used it in tobacco. I read that one place, mixing it in the tobacco. But they would have used it as a tea as well. And it was thought to have a number of medicinal aspects to it. And is now one of our most forgotten flowers. It's one of the best pollinators. It came over with the bees, the honeybees in the 1500s. It's available. It's good for the environment. It's good for you, and you can eat it, make tea out of it, and all the rest. So, and the Civil War soldiers used that. But you know what? They used other things. They would use rose petals. They would use flowers. You know, marigolds, whatever it was important. But the dandelion stands out in my eyes because it's such a common flower.
So what part of the dandelion is this from?
Wait, you can eat the whole dandelion.
Right.
This is the leaves, the dandelion leaves. Yeah. And you can put them on salads even.
Yes, I've seen that,
Yeah. So anything else about the dandelions? Anybody want garden advice after this? I'll give it to you. I'm ardent about those things. Anyway, the next, we're narrowing down to 3. So I'm going to pick the one that I think is, everybody knows about, which is this little cracker here. Right? And anybody want to guess what this is, Civil War people?
Hardtack.
It is hardtack. So go ahead and try the hardtack. And I really want you to hear the story of hardtack. Because it's not what you think.
Daniel loves it. I'm a big fan of that. Daniel loves it. I'm used to it.
Alrighty, what do you notice about the hardtack? It's pretty hard. It's not as hard as it was, but it's pretty hard. It was so hard that when they bit into it, they couldn't they had to soak it in water. So I have a picture of a Civil War soldier from the North sitting on crates and crates, like a mountain of crates of hardtack. It was extremely important, and then I'm going to tell you the part you won't even believe about it. The hardtack was important because, of course, it never spoils. And that was the main thing, and because it was made of 2 ingredients. One is flour and one is water, and that's all that it is. If bugs got in it, all the better, because you eat bugs, right? And so truly it was a protein, so they didn't care, they just ate it anyway. It made them really sick, because it's what they were eating. They didn't have a lot of water, they didn't have a lot of means except dandelions, blackberries, whatever they came across. You know, I'm speaking generally, but for the most part, it made them really constipated. And it was a terrible thing. On the other hand, and they hated it, but on the other hand, they had no other food. It was what stayed with them. So this is what the hardtack was, and what you're eating is exactly how it was made. But they would have it longer, right? So we have somebody make this for us, and she made it about 3.5 weeks.
There's no salt in there?
Maybe they would have added salt. She doesn't, but she would have. Yeah, they would have. Maybe they would have. But the hardtack is, you know, Passover.
It's like
Yeah, well, it is matzah. So matzah was, and it changes the way that we see Passover, because matzah was made out of water and flour, and there never would have been yeast in it. Never. It's not true, because the hardtack that you're eating today was used 2 millennia ago. It was used by Roman soldiers and sailors, particularly the sailors, as they went off to battle. It was used by pirates. It was a really important thing for pirates, because they'd be out there for months at a time, and nobody cared about them, but they had the hardtack. So the list goes on and on with hardtack. It isn't just in Revolutionary War what they call the hardtack. Johnny cakes, right, which are pretty much the same thing, different shape. So you really are looking at an incredible piece of history. And for the Passover idea, they had to run without the yeast. Travelers always used water and flour. Historically, it wasn't yeast. So any questions you thought about was incredible. By the way, I'm going to tell you one more interesting thing, because I like you so much. And you're an audience, and I love it. You know what is older than hardtack? Hardtack goes about, you won't know, but hardtack goes back about 2,000 years, right? You know what's older than that? The Scotty. Really, the Scotty. Yeah. So, yeah. So somebody had a question about hardtack. Did you?
Oh, I'm just always, how did anybody survive as a soldier during the Civil War?
You know, that is such a great question. How did anybody survive? And so there were a number of parts to it. One of them is they didn't. I mean, so many people died. It was just excruciating. The ones who did, there were a million possibilities, right? If they found ways, they knew how to forage, they found ways. That they were from the North and not the South, because the North had a lot better. It wasn't good, but it was better than the South, right? And I'm saying, I know it wasn't just the South.
Because sickness and dysentery were the #1 killers.
Well, sickness and dysentery brought on by starvation.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so there were a lot of reasons. What kept them alive was, I'm going to say, really circumstance. If you go, you see all these blackberries and you collect them and you put them in your pockets, right? The enslaved people who were fighting knew how to forage, because they had been, foraging for their existence for 10 generations. That's important too. So it's a great question, and it's a very profound one. So, yeah. Anything else along those lines? You know what I really want to do? I want to talk to, I'm dying to talk to you about two things. Well, we have two left, right? One of them is going to be the peanut. And then this here, which is so important and is such a great metaphor. And then I'm going to give you something, okay? So this is, of course, as everybody knows, peanut brittle.
Did you see me?
So the story. You know where I'm going? Are you guys ready? Ready to go? The peanut brittle started supposedly in 1840 something, and I think it was somewhere in the South. I can't remember where. It's not true. The peanut brittle started at the turn of the millennia, two millennia ago, and it was honey and sesame. That's actually a biblical and they're very popular energy bar, but it started as that. So the idea of putting nuts in some kind of sugar is thousands of years old, as is the hardtack, right? For the people of the South, however, there was a special attachment to brittle because it tasted good, it was easy to make, and it used, in this case, the peanuts, which was so important. The enslaved people at the same time were making use of the peanuts because of what it meant to them historically. So the peanut originated, you'll never guess unless you know where the peanut originated, in South America, around, I believe it was Peru. And people, and the traders,